A 10-year-old boy went to buy bread with his mother. Instead, a Harley pulled up beside him, and the man wearing its patches froze when he heard the boy's last name. What followed wasn't coincidence, pity, or charity, but a past that refused to stay buried. The gas station sat at the edge of nowhere particular, one of those places where two county roads intersected and someone decades ago decided it was reason enough to build something. By Thursday afternoon, the lunch rush had faded and the dinner crowd hadn't started yet. Danny Preston stood near the front of the convenience store, watching his mother's silhouette move between the aisles inside. She told him to wait by the car. He hadn't listened. The rumble reached him first. Deep and unmistakable, the kind of sound that rattled in your chest before your ears fully registered it. Danny turned as the Harley pulled up to pump 3, its chrome catching the late autumn sunlight. The rider killed the engine and swung off, moving with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this 10,000 times. Danny's breath caught. The vest, black leather, worn soft at the edges, patches stitched across the back in careful rows. A rocker across the shoulders. Colors he recognized from the photographs hidden in his mother's closet, the ones he'd memorized during sleepless nights. His father standing beside a bike that looked a lot like this one, wearing a vest that looked exactly like that. His feet moved before his brain caught up. 10 years old, and he still hadn't learned how to talk to strangers properly. But something pulled him forward anyway. He stopped a few feet away, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. "Excuse me." The man turned. Mid-40s, maybe older, with a graying beard and eyes that had spent too many hours squinting into wind. He didn't smile, but he didn't look annoyed either. Just waited. "My dad." Danny started, then stopped. His throat felt tight. "He used to wear patches like yours." The biker's expression shifted, something flickering across his face that Danny couldn't quite read. "Yeah? What club?" Danny told him. Said the name of the chapter his father had ridden with, the one William, though Danny didn't know his name yet, had belonged to for 23 years. "What was your dad's name, kid?" "Robert Preston." William's hand froze on the gas pump handle. For a long moment he just stood there, staring at Danny like he was trying to solve a puzzle that didn't make sense. Then he set the nozzle back carefully, clicked it into place, and crouched down so they were eye level. "Rob Preston," he repeated, and his voice had gone quiet. "Rob rode a '98 Softail. Had that stupid joke about carburetors he told every damn time we stopped for gas." Danny nodded. His throat tightened, pressure building behind his eyes. Nobody talked about him naturally anymore, without ceremony or weight. "I knew your dad." William stood slowly, running a hand through his beard. "Rode with him for, 5 years, maybe 6. I was at his funeral." He paused, and the next words came out careful, almost confused. "Nobody said anything about a son. Mom didn't tell many people." Danny's voice was barely above a whisper. "She said it was easier that way." From the garage bay adjacent to the gas station, a mechanic in grease-stained coveralls had stopped pretending to work on the Chevy he was supposed to be rotating tires on. Earl had been half listening since the kid approached the biker, and now he walked over, wiping his hands on a rag that only made them dirtier. "Rob Preston," Earl said, not quite a question. "Tall guy, always paid cash. Tip too much?" William glanced at him. "You knew him?" "Fixed his bike 3-4 times. Maybe more." Earl looked at Danny. Recognition flickered across his face. He'd show up early for every appointment. Always asked about my granddaughter, remembered her name, remembered she was trying out for softball. Last time I saw him, he tipped me $40 for an oil change that cost 30. He shook his head slowly. That was 2 weeks before the accident. Didn't know he had a kid either. Danny felt the weight shift inside him. Not disappearing, but finally shared. These men remembered. They remembered details. Small, ordinary things that proved his father had existed as more than the grief that filled their apartment. More than the stack of unpaid medical bills. More than the reason his mother cried in the shower where she thought he couldn't hear. "How old are you?" William asked. 10. "So you would have been, 8 when it happened?" "Yeah." William exhaled slowly, and Danny recognized the look that crossed his face. He'd seen it on his mother's face 100 times. That moment when someone did the math and realized how much a kid that age understands, how much weight he'd been carrying alone. "Does your mom know you're talking to me?" "She's inside." Danny gestured toward the store. She'll probably come out soon. What's she gonna think about you talking to some biker in a parking lot? Danny's shoulders lifted in a shrug that tried to be casual and failed. She gets worried about stuff. It was the understatement of his short life. His mother worried about everything now. Bills, insurance denials, whether Danny was eating enough, whether he was too quiet, whether bringing up his father's name would shatter whatever fragile stability they'd built. So Danny had learned to carry it himself. The memories, the questions, the weight of missing someone he barely got time to know. William seemed to read something in the silence that followed. He pulled out his phone, checked the screen, then looked back at Danny. Listen, kid, I'm gonna make a call. Is that okay? Danny nodded, unsure what else to do. William stepped a few feet away, phone to his ear, voice low. Earl stayed close, not quite hovering but present. A quiet witness to something unfolding that none of them had planned. Inside the store, Danny's mother picked up bread, peanut butter, the cheapest brand of pasta sauce. She was thinking about whether they could afford chicken this week. She wasn't thinking about the past pulling up to pump 3 on a Harley. About her son finally finding someone who remembered. Lisa Preston pushed through the glass door with her hip, plastic bags hanging from both arms. She'd spent 17 minutes inside comparing unit prices, calculating what they could stretch until her next paycheck. The mental arithmetic never stopped anymore. Every purchase was a negotiation with reality. She looked toward their car and didn't see Danny. Her heart kicked against her ribs. She scanned the lot, spotted him near the pumps, talking to a man in leather. A biker, standing too close. Her son's face turned up toward a stranger's, animated in a way she hadn't seen in months. The bags hit the pavement before she realized she'd dropped them. Danny! She was moving fast, her nurse's shoes slapping against concrete. Danny! Get away from him. Her son turned, confusion crossing his face. Mom, it's okay. Now. She positioned herself between them, one hand finding Danny's shoulder and pulling him back. Her other hand was shaking. She curled it into a fist so the biker wouldn't see. William raised both palms, stepping back deliberately. Ma'am, I don't care what you're not. Her voice came out sharp, honed by 2 years of fighting and losing. You don't approach someone's child. Mom, he knew Dad. The words hit her like cold water. She looked at William properly. The vest, the patches, the way he was watching her with something that looked like understanding rather than offense. You're Rob's wife, William said quietly. It wasn't a question. Lisa's grip on Danny's shoulder tightened. I don't know you. No, ma'am, you don't. Name's William Cole. I rode with your husband for 6 years. I was at the funeral. He paused, careful with his next words. I didn't know Rob had a son. None of us did. The admission cost her more than she wanted to show, but she couldn't afford to let it show. That wasn't an accident. Danny looked up at her, and she couldn't meet his eyes. How do you explain to a 10-year-old that you've been trying to outrun grief by pretending part of their life never existed? That every time he mentions his father, you see the mortgage you can't pay, the college fund that evaporated, the future that died on a rain-slicked highway? I'm not trying to cause problems, William said. But your boy just told me things about his dad that... He stopped, recalibrated. He's been carrying this alone, hasn't he? We've managed fine on our own. Have you? Because your kid looks like he's been drowning. Earl had wandered closer, still holding his rag. Ma'am, I knew your husband too. Fixed his bike. Good man. Paid his debts. He gestured at William. These aren't bad people. Lisa wanted to scream at the unfairness of it. She'd spent 2 years keeping them afloat. 2 years of double shifts and rejected insurance claims and watching her son retreat into himself while she was too tired to know how to reach him. And now strangers. Men who knew Rob for a few years, who shared roads and bar tabs but not the mortgage or the medical bills, were telling her what her son needed. But she also saw the way Danny was looking at William, like he'd been sitting in darkness and someone finally opened the door. William pulled out his phone. I called some brothers. They're coming here. I'd like you to meet them. Absolutely not. Mom, Danny, no. She was crumbling and couldn't let him see it. We don't know these people. They knew Dad. That doesn't mean... Her voice broke. She pressed her lips together, fighting for control. When she spoke again, It came out quieter, raw. Baby, I can't keep doing this. Every time we talk about him, I see everything we lost. I see the bills I can't pay. I see you getting hurt all over again. I'm trying to keep us stable. I'm already hurt, Danny said, and the simple honesty of it nearly dropped her to her knees. The rumble of engines saved her from having to respond. 5 motorcycles rolled into the lot in formation, parking in a neat row near William's bike. The riders dismounted, ranging in age from late 30s to past 60. They moved like men comfortable in their bodies and their place in the world. One of them hung back, though, younger than the others, maybe early 30s, with a fresh scar cutting through his left eyebrow. He kept his distance, hands in his pockets, watching the scene with something that looked like guilt. William gestured toward the group. These are some of the guys who rode with Rob. That's Jackson, Pete, Harry, Ray. He pointed to the one standing apart. That's Tommy. Tommy met Lisa's eyes briefly, then looked away. There was a story there, something unfinished. Mrs. Preston, Jackson said, his voice gravelly but gentle. We're not here to cause problems. We just heard Rob's kid was here, and we wanted to... He paused, searching for the right words. We wanted to make sure you both knew he mattered to more people than just you. We know he mattered, Lisa said, but her voice had lost its edge. Do you? William asked. Because from where I'm standing, looks like you've been trying real hard to make sure nobody remembers, including your son. It was too honest, too direct, and exactly what she needed to hear. Lisa looked down at Danny, saw the hope warring with fear on his face, and felt something in her finally surrender. What do you want? She asked. Come to the clubhouse, William said. Let the kid hear some stories about his dad. Let him know Rob was real, that he had friends, that his life meant something beyond what it cost you when he died. He met her eyes. Your son needs to know his father wasn't just the reason everything fell apart. Lisa stood there, surrounded by bikers and the ghost of the man she'd loved and lost, and realized she was too tired to keep running. 1 hour, she said finally. 1 hour, and then we're leaving. Danny's face broke into something that almost looked like relief. Tommy finally stepped forward, his voice quiet. Ma'am, I owe your family an apology. Your husband and we had words before he died. Stupid territorial BS that didn't matter. I never got to make it right with him. He looked at Danny. If it's okay, I'd like to make it right with his kid. Lisa nodded, unable to speak. William picked up her fallen groceries, handed them to her gently. Follow us. It's not far. The clubhouse wasn't what Lisa expected. No darkness, no danger. Just a converted warehouse with motorcycles in various states of assembly lining the walls. Tools hung in organized rows. A wooden table dominated the center space, scarred with years of use, surrounded by mismatched chairs. It smelled like motor oil and coffee that had been sitting too long on a hot plate. Danny walked in ahead of her, taking it all in with wide eyes. A woman adjusting a carburetor nodded at them without stopping. In the corner, 2 kids played cards on an overturned crate. Sit wherever, William said, gesturing to the table. You want coffee? It's terrible, but it's hot. Lisa shook her head. Danny climbed onto a chair, his feet not quite reaching the floor. The riders settled in around them with an ease that suggested they'd done this 1,000 times. Because they had. This was their space, their routine. Jackson dropped into the chair nearest Danny, groaning slightly as his knees protested. Getting old, he muttered to no one in particular. You've been old? Pete shot back, grabbing a beer from a mini fridge in the corner. Your dad? Ray started, looking at Danny. Couldn't navigate for shit. I mean, we'd be riding through 3 states, GPS on his phone, paper map in his saddlebag, and he'd still manage to lead us 20 miles in the wrong direction. William laughed, the sound genuine. Remember that run to Sturgis? Rob swore he knew a shortcut. We ended up on a dirt road that dead-ended at somebody's horse pasture. The owner came out with a shotgun, Harry added, grinning, and Rob just, completely calm, asks the guy for directions like we hadn't just torn up his fence line. Danny's mouth twitched into something almost resembling a smile. He got lost a lot? Constantly, Pete confirmed. But he never admitted it. He'd just say we were exploring alternative routes. The stories kept coming. Fragments of ordinary life, unpolished and real. The time Rob fixed a carburetor in a gas station parking lot in Montana using a Swiss Army knife and determination. How he always ordered hash browns at diners even though everyone knew he hated them. Claimed they were good for soaking up bad coffee. The way he'd sing off-key to classic rock and not care who heard. Lisa sat rigid at first, braced for pain. But the pain she'd braced for never came. Instead, she found herself laughing at a story about Rob attempting to make scrambled eggs on a camping trip and somehow setting them on fire. She'd forgotten that part of him, the man who could rebuild an engine but couldn't cook to save his life. Jackson watched Danny more than he listened to the stories. The way the kid tilted his head when concentrating, a slight furrow appearing between his eyebrows. How he wiped his hands on his jeans before touching the table, even though his hands were clean. Small gestures Jackson had seen 1,000 times in Rob, unconscious echoes passed from father to son. "You know anything about bikes?" Jackson asked during a lull in conversation. Danny shook his head. "Mom says they're dangerous." "They are," Jackson said honestly. "So are cars. So's crossing the street. Your dad respected that danger. That's why he was careful." He stood, gestured toward the garage area. "Come here. I'll show you something." Lisa tensed, but William caught her eye and shook his head slightly. "Trust this." Danny followed Jackson to a partially disassembled Harley. Jackson crouched beside it, pointing to various components. "This is the primary. See how it connects here? Your dad could take one of these apart and put it back together blindfolded." "Really?" "Well, not blindfolded, but close." Jackson handed Danny a wrench. "Here, see that bolt? Try loosening it. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey." Danny gripped the tool carefully, his face scrunching with concentration, that same expression Rob used to make. He struggled with the bolt for a moment before Jackson's larger hand covered his, adjusting the angle. "There. Feel the difference?" Danny nodded, and when the bolt finally gave way, his face lit up with accomplishment. The two kids in the corner had abandoned their card game and wandered over. The older one, a girl with her father's dark hair, introduced herself as Maya. "Your dad die too?" she asked Danny with the bluntness only kids can manage. "Yeah. Mine died in Colorado. Rolled his bike on black ice." She said it matter-of-factly, without drama. "It sucks, but it gets less sharp." The younger boy, Carlos, added, "My dad's still around. He's the one who made that terrible coffee." He grinned. "Your dad sounds like he was cool." "He was," Danny said quietly, and realized he'd said it in present tense. "Was not his." In months, nobody had talked about his father this way. Like he was real, like he mattered beyond the grief. As the afternoon bled into evening, Lisa watched her son operate in a space where grief wasn't treated like something fragile or contaminated. It simply existed alongside everything else. The laughter, the work, the casual profanity, the shared meals. Nobody tiptoed around it. Nobody treated Danny like he might shatter. Jackson stayed close without hovering, answering questions patiently, his hand steady on Danny's shoulder when the boy seemed uncertain about something. It wasn't announced or formalized, but Lisa recognized what she was seeing. Someone stepping into a space that had been empty too long. Tommy approached her quietly as the others talked. "Your husband, he was right about the thing we argued over. I was being territorial and stupid. I wanted you to know that." "He never mentioned it," Lisa said, "because he was a better man than I was." Tommy's jaw worked. "I didn't come to the funeral. Thought I didn't deserve to be there. But I should have checked on you. On the kid. We all should have." Lisa nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in her throat. When she finally glanced at her watch, 3 hours had passed. Danny was elbow-deep in helping Jackson clean parts in a solvent bath, chattering about gear ratios with the confidence of someone who'd found his people. Lisa thought they might actually survive this. The visits started cautiously. 3-hour windows that gradually stretched, 5 hours, then full afternoons. By the time winter settled in, Danny had his own workspace in the corner. A small bench with a toolbox Jackson had given him for Christmas. He learned to change oil properly, to read the subtle differences in engine sounds that meant something needed attention. Jackson taught him patience, how rushing a repair only meant doing it twice. When Danny stripped a bolt trying to force it, Jackson didn't get angry. He just handed him the extractor kit and said, "Now you know why we don't muscle it." The club helped in ways that weren't announced or formalized. When Lisa's car started making an ominous grinding noise, William told her to bring it by. 3 hours later, she drove away with new brake pads and rotors, and when she tried to pay, Pete waved her off. Rob would have done it for any of us. Ray's wife worked in hospital administration and mentioned an opening for a nurse coordinator position. Better pay, regular hours, closer to home. Lisa got the interview, got the job, and stopped waking at 3 a.m. calculating bills in fear. Danny hit middle school carrying less weight than most kids his age, but carrying it differently. When classmates complained about their parents, he stayed quiet. When Father's Day assignments came around and the teacher offered him an out, he declined. He wrote about his dad and turned it in without apology. At 13, he made his first real mistake at the clubhouse. He'd rushed rebuilding a clutch assembly, wanting to prove himself. The parts didn't seat right. When Jackson test rode the bike, the clutch slipped dangerously. He brought the bike back, shut it down, and looked at Danny for a long moment. "You know what you did wrong?" Danny nodded, miserable. "I didn't check the tolerance." "Why not?" "I thought I didn't need to." Jackson sat on the workbench, considering. "Pride'll get you killed on a bike. It'll get someone else killed too. Your dad knew that. He triple-checked everything because other people's lives depended on it." He paused. "You're better than this. Do it again. Properly." Danny tore the whole assembly apart and rebuilt it from scratch. Took 4 hours. Jackson watched the entire time, not helping, just present. By 15, Danny had height on him, nearly 6 feet, all lanky limbs he hadn't quite grown into. He'd started helping younger kids who came through the way Jackson had helped him. A 9-year-old named Kevin, whose mother had just joined the club's extended family after her partner died in a workplace accident, shadowed Danny everywhere. "Why do you have to clean it so much?" Kevin asked, watching Danny degrease a chain for the 3rd time. "Because dirt is the enemy," Danny said, repeating something Jackson had told him years ago. "You take care of your machine, it takes care of you." He showed Kevin how to properly torque bolts, how to listen for the click that meant you'd hit the spec. Patient in ways he hadn't known he could be. Lisa watched her son navigate adolescence with the kind of community she tried to protect him from. She watched him argue with Tommy about the right way to tune a carburetor. Actual disagreement, raised voices, and then watched them reconcile over pizza an hour later, the conflict resolved and forgotten. This was the part she'd been afraid of. Seeing Danny become part of something she couldn't control. But control, she was learning, had never been the point. Connection was. At 16, Danny asked Jackson a question he'd been holding for months. "Did you know my dad was going to crash that day?" Jackson set down the socket wrench he'd been holding. "No, nobody ever knows. But you think about it. What if you'd been there? What if you could have changed something?" "Every day for the first year," Jackson admitted. But Rob made his own choices. He knew the risks. He rode anyway because the freedom mattered more than the fear. He looked at Danny directly. "You blame anyone for it?" "I used to blame Mom for not stopping him. And now I think she loved him enough to let him be who he was." Jackson nodded slowly. "That's the hard part. Loving people means letting them take risks. Means accepting you can't protect them from everything." When Danny turned 18, he'd accumulated enough hours in the garage to find work at a legitimate shop across town. Good pay, decent benefits, a boss who recognized skill when he saw it. He still came to the clubhouse 3 nights a week, not because he had to, but because it was home in ways his apartment with Lisa wasn't. 6 months into dating Sophie, she asked if he'd ever ride. Rain drummed on the windshield between them. "I don't know," Danny said honestly. "Sometimes I think I should. Other times I think it'd destroy my mom." "What do you think your dad would want?" "For me to choose for myself." It was the truest thing he'd said in months. On a Saturday morning in early spring, Danny stood in the clubhouse workshop teaching Kevin, now 12 and finally tall enough to reach most tools without a step stool, how to properly gap spark plugs. "See this measurement? This is critical. Too wide, you get misfires. Too narrow, you get weak ignition." Kevin squinted at the gap tool, tongue poking out in concentration, the same expression Danny used to make, the same one his father had made before him. Jackson watched from across the room, arms crossed, pride settled in his chest, quiet and earned. Lisa arrived to pick up some paperwork William had helped her file. Insurance stuff, bureaucratic loose ends from a life that felt like it belonged to someone else now. She saw her son bent over a workbench, patient and capable, passing forward what had been given to him. "He's good at this," William said, appearing at her elbow. "He is. Rob would be proud." Lisa smiled, and for once it didn't hurt. "Yeah, he would." Danny glanced up, caught his mother's eye, and grinned. Not the careful, protective expression he'd worn for years, but something genuine and unguarded. The grief was still there, it always would be, but it had been integrated into something larger now, woven into a life built on memory and community and choice. Outside, engines rumbled to life as a group prepared for a ride. Inside, a kid learned about tolerance and precision from someone who'd learned it the same way. Sometimes the people who save us aren't the ones we expect. They're strangers at gas stations who stop long enough to listen. What's a moment when someone showed up for you when you needed it most? Drop your story in the comments. And if this one hit you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. We'll see you in the next story.